Hey, it's Justin. I'm back. And if you're worried about the future, so am I, and lots of people are. It's kind of a disturbing time, particularly if you pay attention to real estate. One of the things that I find remarkable is that from the end of the Second World War to about 2000, so you have this 50-year period, 50 plus, home prices were relatively stable related to income. Yeah, a house cost about 3, maybe 5 times what an annual income was in the United States. And in the housing spike that happened in 2006, that was the peak, 21st century, it was well above 5 years income. The average house was well above 5 years average income. And you think, well, how can that be, right? Because it's the free market should dictate that house prices can't go that high, because that means nobody can afford them. Well, I think it was the hyper-financialization of the housing market, where people were treating housing like stocks, a commodity that was to be bought and sold and to make a lot of money with. And I mean, there was always some of that going on, but it got kind of aggressive in the early part of the 21st century, and then now we're seeing that again. We've seen housing spikes in 2021 and 22 that are way above 5 years average income. So house prices are not related to income the way they used to be. And it's very disturbing. And not only that, you get these wild fluctuations. One of the problems we saw in around 2010, 11, 12, housing prices did come down, but they still really only came down to about 5 years income on average, which is kind of high. And that was the bottom. And then they started going back up. And then we have what we have now, which we have these very high home prices. So that's a disturbing thing if you are wanting to live the American dream and have a house. As soon as you get your financial house in order, and then you look at home prices, you're like, my God, it's like Rip Van Winkle. They've gone through the roof. And now I thought I was making a lot of money, and it turns out, well, relative to the price of the house, I'm not making enough money. And then you have a big decline, and then it's like, well, that's great, home prices are coming down, but your income situation is messed up. You got laid off, you're an independent contractor, you're not making the money you used to make because the economy's a mess. So this is a very unhealthy time to be shopping for a home. And you think, my God, what is the future going to look like? Is it going to get even worse? And I look for things that are a bit optimistic, or somewhat optimistic. And I want to share with you a couple of things that I found that really changed the way I thought about the future in a positive way. One of them is a writer called Rana Foroohar. She wrote a book called Homecoming, which is her analysis of how we got to where we are now and what the future could look like. And she's generally optimistic. I mean, she's hopeful about the future of the United States, and she's looking at or hoping for a time when we will see something like we saw in the 50s and 60s, where we have a strong middle class, and we have more optimism and more upward mobility, where people are doing useful things and making a decent living doing it. Think of that. God forbid, right? And so I didn't realize how famous and successful Rana was until recently, and I'm going to put in the below a link to one of the interviews that I think are really particularly enlightening with her. The other person I want to mention is Justin Huhn. He is a uranium expert. He's being interviewed on the Adam Taggart show at Wealthy, one of my favorite shows. But he is a guy that he obviously has an interest in uranium being valuable and having a, uranium mining having a future. So there may be a little conflict of interest there. I don't know. But listening to him speak about nuclear and how it could fit into our energy needs in the future is quite inspirational. I hope I'm not being played by this gentleman, but it sounds pretty good to me. And when you consider what has happened to Germany in the last year, I mean, that's pretty ugly. They got rid of all their nuclear, and then they got slammed. They got dependent on Russia, and then they got slammed by the Russians. And nuclear is a way to ensure that those types of things can happen. So I'm going to put the link for Justin Hahn's interview with Adam Taggart and one of the more exciting interviews with Rana Foroohar below, and I hope you watch them, and I hope you comment on them. And I'm going to do a few more programs like this where I'm finding some positive stuff. All right, this has been Justin, your Renegade Realtor. Thanks for hanging in there, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.